And welcome. It's InGame Live Prime Time on this fabulous Friday. Scott Wetzel alongside Dane Martinez. How about that? A little blast from the past, as Dane and I used to do this show all the time, Monday through Friday, not that long ago. He's sitting in for Dave Sherapan today as we take you right up until 10 p.m. Eastern Time, watching, analyzing, and more importantly, betting on the world of sports. Little NBA tonight. We got the women's Final Four action, which brings up a subject I want to get into, which we will for a couple of seconds, on why the women do it right and the men, to me, do it wrong. We got a couple of baseball games as well. So what's going on, my friend? How are you tonight, Dan?
I'm doing well, Scott. I'm glad to be back here. If you see something, say something. We're going to try and make some people a little bit of extra cash tonight as we go into a weekend. I mean, what better? People got paid probably today, right? So now they got to bet it live here with us on the grid.
Yeah, absolutely. We got to bring back some of the old expressions for sure. Let me just start off at the top because we got the women's Final Four going on now. That's just a little pet peeve of mine, something I've talked about over the years. I never quite understood why the men have their Final Four on a Saturday into a Monday night. And we all know here on the East Coast, it starts well after 9 o'clock. So the game's not ending until near midnight. Who's watching, one, and then, who would even be doing that versus, I always said, as popular as the Super Bowl is on a Sunday, why not have it on a Friday and then Sunday late afternoon and have all these Super Bowl / NCAA men's basketball championship parties? To me, it would be so much more successful, but they never did it. And I got so many goofy reasons. And lo and behold, this year, maybe they did it last year, I forget, but the women are doing it that way. They're doing it Friday, Sunday. Don't know why the men don't do it that way, Dave.
No, I think that's a good point. What's also interesting is that the NBA is off on Monday. They defer to the national championship game, kind of in the same way that over in college football game, they wait until the regular season is over. And it's always that Monday that would be the Monday Night Football on like week 18, if that were to ever happen, right? But I think you're right. Friday into Sunday pretty much does maximize the possible eyeballs that could come to the product instead of on a Monday night, like you said, also late tip. The game is not going to get started, the national championship game on the men's side, until at least 9:30 p.m. And if you're trying to bring new fans into the tent, especially young ones, I understand that having probably the championship on a Sunday, the entire family can gather around the table and crown a national champ.
Yeah, it just never made any sense. And people said, well, if the teams on Friday night lose, those people are going to go home. And I'm like, you know what? I don't think so. I think there's a bigger chance of the losers, the fan base, probably staying over Saturday night into Sunday and then saying, you know what? Am I going to miss a day of work on Monday and a day of work on Tuesday? No, I'm just going to cancel my vacation here and I'm going to go home Sunday afternoon. Where if it's Friday into Sunday, win, lose, or draw, they're going to stay there Friday night, and then they're in this host city on a Saturday. They're not going to go home. So that excuse doesn't make sense to me either. And just the ability to throw like Super Bowl / like I said, NCAA parties on a Sunday, I don't doubt for a second. They got less than 15 million viewers last year for UConn San Diego State. I looked it up. They would double that day. I don't know if they would triple it, but they would. There's no doubt in my mind they would double the audience if they built this thing up and had a Sunday afternoon party, especially in February where there's nothing going on. Sports fans are thriving for something, right?
I think that makes sense. And before, what you were talking about in terms of like the fans of the two losers going home, right. I don't think that would ever happen. Do you know how much money these people are spending for the flights, for the hotels, regardless of if they win or lose? They're sticking it out for the root. And then, to be honest, here's the other part. You and I, what was one of the best parts of the tournament? When it's over, getting to see the one shining moment. But that's not going to happen until midnight. You do it a little bit earlier on a Sunday, and then people can even get a taste of that as well.
Yeah, I don't think I've seen a one shining moment in about 4 years. I'm getting older here. It's like turn the TV
it's
set
like the ball dropping on New Year's. I'm asleep by 12:05.
Who does that anymore, right? Yeah, exactly. So, well, we do have women's Final Four action. It's the lesser of the two. Everyone's looking for UConn and Iowa. Obviously, that's the night game, or the late game. I shouldn't say night. This is the night as well. So we got North Carolina State, South Carolina. I know South Carolina is great, Dane. I know they're undefeated, number one, have been, despite all the hype with Iowa and Caitlin Clark and UConn always being really good. It is actually South Carolina that's great. But I don't know if you're into the women's basketball enough to know that the South Carolina leading only by one over the third seed NC State Wolfpack, 32-31. Any interest in this game versus the later game?
No, I think, that is the kind of main event is the late game with Iowa and UConn, Paige Beckers and Caitlin Clark going at it. But I think you're right, Scott. The best team is South Carolina, undefeated. I think the reason is the star of the team is their coach, Dawn Staley. I mean, this is the second year in a row now they've gotten to the Final Four as an undefeated squad. As you mentioned, they are up by only one at halftime. But even with them up by only one, they're right now laying 7.5. So the books pretty much think that they are going to, eventually run away and hide, that the cream will rise to the top. I also think that South Carolina is going to pull away here in the second half, but I don't know if I'd lay the 7.5 at this point.
Yeah, I wish that was Dane. I wish that was 4.5. Because
right.
I'm a little surprised it is only one, because you talk about a team that should have a huge chip on its shoulder, right? Not only do they go into the championship game last year undefeated and then lose to LSU, now who's talking about South Carolina this year, right? Nobody. It's all Caitlin Clark. To a lesser extent, UConn. But now that UConn's playing Iowa, who's talking about South Carolina, NC State? Like nobody. I mean, you again, talk about a chip on your shoulder, just like no one's giving us any respect and any appreciation, blah, 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 blah. I thought they would come out flying today. And I think they would have that huge chip on their shoulder and that mental edge heading into a championship game if they should get there. But 7.5, yeah. I wish that if it was 3.5, 4.5, I actually might delve in. But at 7.5, I'm going to lay off as well.
Yeah, I think you're right there. That's kind of really the line, right? And that's also the line our guy Dave Sharapan tells us all the time, where you stop fouling if it's about a 7-point lead. That's when you eventually give it up. But if it's a 2-3 point game, you continue to foul. So, I think it's right there on that cusp. I also want to get real quick, Scott, if we can. I've got a same-game parlay that I know we got to get to for a game that is about to do a first pitch. So let's get into that so people don't, say that I'm lying after when it actually winds up happening, that I didn't have it beforehand. Let's give it out pregame. But I think we do a whole big production now. I'm new, so I'm not positive. I think we do a whole thing first, right?
Yeah, here we go.
All right, so here's my same game parlay. We're doing it early in the show because it is first pitch going on right now from the Seattle Mariners and the Milwaukee Brewers. Here are the three legs of my same game parlay. First, I like Milwaukee to win the game, all right? That's just straight, and the books do as well. They're the favorites on the money line at -122. I like the game going under, okay? These are two of the lower scoring teams in Major League Baseball so far. Milwaukee's only scored 20 runs on the season. That's 25th in Major League Baseball. A limited sample size, I know. Seattle even less, 17. I like both of these pictures. Gilbert on the Seattle side and Freddie Peralta on the Milwaukee side. Freddie Peralta and his strikeouts are the other part of this. I think he's going to get 7 or more strikeouts in this one. In his first start against the Mets earlier in this season, he got 8 strikeouts in only 6 innings of work. And Seattle, get this, Scott, in only 7 games so far, the Mariners have struck out 74 times, Scott. That's more than 10 a game. So I think Peralta can get to 7. I think the game stays under, and I like the Brew Crew to win it.
Wow, that is a lot of strikeouts. That is definitely. All right, so there you go. A little same game parlay. I'll have mine a little bit later on this hour. I got an NBA one to get to. So we'll check out the NBA, the rest of the baseball board when we come back in Game Live Prime Time.
So I'm not sure Alabama is the team to knock them off from this second consecutive national championship chase. But what will be the key for the Crimson Tide if they can even cover a number?
That wing ball screen action, how you defend that is going to be a problem because of Donovan Clingan, it forces you to change so much what you do defensively if he's able to score inside.
Only on SportsGrid.
Talk all you want about how fat he is. No one can guard him. No one can stop him. He's a violent offender. He does whatever he wants in the low block and at the 10. He just does whatever he wants and scores at will, ad nauseum.
They're the Mike Tyson of college basketball. At some point, they're going to throw a haymaker. And when it connects, Pharrell, you're not getting up.
Pharrell Coast to Coast. Only on SportsGrid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid, your 24/7 sports wagering network. The early line.
Magical and historic season in Lincoln, Nebraska continues.
He is the best player in the NBA, but also in the biggest moments where the national media is watching.
Newswire.
Something that we have never seen happen before with one of the iconic coaches in the game.
Pharrell Coast to Coast.
The team covers. It's automatic. It's every time. Not sometimes. It's every time.
Game time decisions.
Luka is actually far more dangerous from three on the road this year than at home.
This game here tonight, you may want to consider taking as many points as humanly possible.
InGame Live, PrimeTime.
We got not one, but two coaches fired systems in place.
Sports Rage
This
Late
sort of
Night.
has letdown written all over it. It's going to be hard to match the emotion that they played with the other night.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
All right, welcome back. In-game live, prime time here on the grid. Scott Wetzel, Dane Martinez until 10 p.m. Eastern time. Watching a little bit of baseball, a little NBA, a little not WNBA, but NCAA women's basketball. We'll break down the Final Four on the men's side as well. Got a decent little hockey game with Colorado and Edmonton that we can follow as well, starting in a little bit. Baseball slate includes the Mets in Cincinnati. They are tied at 1. As we all know, it's been a rough start for the Mets. They lose their first 5. They darn near got no hit, even though he ended up winning the game yesterday against the Detroit Tigers. But Bob Nightingale, who has covered Major League Baseball forever, I've talked to him many times on various shows, was on Coast to Coast with Scotty today, says Met fans, help might be on the way.
What will Cashman have to give Soto to keep him in the Bronx? He had a bad home debut today, but I thought his debut with the Yankees on the road trip, was phenomenal.
Well, it started off strong, but he didn't do anything in Arizona. Went 1 for 12. He was a disappointment in San Diego. I know everybody talks about the offense and stuff. Drew a lot of walks, below average in the field, below average as a base runner. We'll see. I do believe the Mets will be a big player with him. I think they'll trade Alonso at the deadline and move on from there. I think they're going to follow the David Stearns, motto here, what they did in Milwaukee. And they want to kind of reset the taxes, and they'll go big. So I fully expect them to have a better, bigger winner next year than this year. They kind of put the writing on the wall last year when they traded away both Scherzer and Verlander and told those guys, we're going to rebuild. And that's what they're doing. But I think next year they're going to have a big star, and I think that they'll do everything possible. And I do think they'll outbid the Yankees for Soto. We'll see what the Yankees do.
There you go, a little bit from Bob Nightingale, good baseball man on Coast to Coast with Scotty Farrell today. I don't know. You can count Dane on one finger. I can literally 0 fingers how many times the Yankees wanted the guy and the Mets wanted the guy and the Mets got the guy. You don't. I know George is not around. I get that, but I don't think Soto, and I don't know why Soto would go to a Mets team that's going to be bad. They're going to lose 90 to 100 games this year. I think they're going to be awful. That's going to be a hell of a selling point. Don't go with the Yankees, who spend money and are going to win 90-plus games and be in the playoffs, maybe this year. Come to us, even though we've lost 90, 95 games, and we're going to spend a whole lot of money. I don't see it. I really don't.
I'm with you, Scotty, okay? Especially when he also says he thinks they're going to move on from Alonso, even further depleting the team, even further trying to signal like we're rebuilding here, right? If this was a trade, that would be one thing, but we're talking about Soto as a free agent. So to your point, Soto would have to have a desire to join a team that, quite frankly, we expect to be rebuilding. I think you're right. It is going to be a long season at Citi Field this year, especially after the Senga injury, right? Like, who are they relying on as arms? Luis Severino, Quintana, these kinds of guys, I think they're going to wind up winning, 70-something games. They're going to be in third or fourth place in the division. And you're right, they probably are going to move on from Alonso. So how is that attractive to a top-of-the-line free agent that wants to try to win? Especially, let me tell you something, and I'm a Yankees fan, Scott, but I really think this is aside from the fandom, okay? I saw opening day. I saw the Bleacher Creatures do the roll call. Soto absolutely ate it up and bowed to them. You also know that the Yankees are going to be competitive. I don't know if you think they're going to win the division or go to the ALCS, but I know that they're going to try every year of however long Juan Soto's next contract is, right? And if I'm Juan Soto, I want to be with a team that is going to embrace me, that I know is going to be competitive all the time. And also it's 314 down the right field line.
This
Soto swing is absolutely perfect ever since like Matsui, Giambi, other guys that have been lefty power hitters that they have brought in. I think Soto is going to be fitting just fine. And if the Yankees do well, make any kind of a playoff run this year, why would he turn around and leave that to go be with a rebuilding team? It's not like the Yankees can't compete financially either. So I love Nightingale, but I think he's off on this one.
Yeah, you said it. That was the kicker, right? He's got a right field that's 10 feet from home plate. Why would he want to leave that on top of all the other stuff? I don't. He's got protection in the lineup. They got him batting in front of Judge, right? So they're not having him be the main guy. They got him, so he should have put up monster numbers. Yeah, like I said, that would have to be one hell of a selling point. Does he have the money, Cohen, the owner of the Mets now, to outbid everybody if he really wanted to? Yeah, I suppose he does, but I just don't. I don't see it either. I really don't. I don't know what the Mets are doing, Dane. My father-in-law's a Mets fan, so I kind of root for them a little bit just from that standpoint. But I don't see it. The guy comes in, Steve Cohen, the new owner, he's viewed as the savior. He spends all this money. He gives it half a season, doesn't even give it all of last year. Right. He dumps everybody. He's still paying everybody's salary. Oh, they got some prospects. So what? I've always said, if you're not smart enough in 35 rounds of the draft to get your own prospects, what makes you think you're smart enough to go to someone else's organization and get those prospects? So they're buying into the prospect thing. And, for 30 years, the Met fan bitched and complained, we don't spend money. We're always dealing with our prospects. And the Yankees spend money. They get a half a season of that, and they dumped that already. Now they're all excited about having prospects. Good luck.
That's the thing. They had a sliver. They went for it for a very short period of time, right? When you had the DeGrom, the Verlander, the Scherzer, and you partnered that with like getting Lindor, let's say, and Alonso was coming on. They had a chance, but then all the injuries hit, and they kind of abandoned ship a little bit quicker than I thought they could have. They could have, with, billionaire Stevie's money, tried to kind of plug those holes in the dam, but instead they decided to break it all down and go kind of the longer term rebuilding route. And let me tell you who's probably most perturbed about that. Pete Alonso. And that's probably why Alonso is not going to be there. And Lindor, who signed on for this. You're absolutely right. So again, when it comes to Soto as a free agent, like, you have to attract me. And I understand that maybe $30 million a year would be very attractive, but I could probably get $30 million a year in a lot of places, in places that will be more competitive. And I don't think people give enough credence to this year with the Yankees as, in essence, an extended recruiting trip. You know what I mean? He's going to feel like, I like being in pinstripes. He's going to experience, and I know you're going to laugh at me, he's going to experience something like Old Timers Day at Yankee Stadium. He's going to have Reggie Jackson in the clubhouse and that sort of thing. And then if he brings some success in New York, he's going to want to stay and finish the job. And I think sometimes these little one-year rentals, people discount how the athletes starts to feel comfortable there, starts to love their teammates there, starts to ingratiate themselves to the fans. And I think that's what's going to happen with Soto. And I actually think Soto is going to wind up staying with the Yankees.
Yeah, me too. And I know he won a World Series with Washington, but he also was on a couple of bad teams before they moved him off to San Diego. And I can't help but Dane think, you know what, I've been there, done that. I don't want to deal with that. I don't want to have to rely on a team going from scratch to being really good again. No thanks. I'll take the secure spot with the Yankees versus the unsecure spot with the Mets. So anyway, should be interesting having these two. It's been, I don't even know if there really has been a case where the Yankees absolutely wanted somebody and the Mets absolutely wanted somebody. Because the Mets generally don't delve into the free agent market, or if they do, it's always the secondary guy. So it'll be interesting. So Mets are tied with Cincinnati 1-1. I am curious today. This was also basically pick 'em with Green on the hill for Cincinnati at home.
Yeah.
Cincinnati's off to a good start. Mets are not. It is tied 1-1 right now. But that line to me was suspiciously low. I grabbed Cincinnati at minus 120.
I'm with you. We'll talk about it on the other side. I liked Hunter Green's start. And also, let's put it this way. In the doubleheader yesterday, the Mets used 8 arms out of the bullpen. So whoever's starting, I think it's Quintana for the Mets, is going to have to go, more than he's accustomed to. I think he went 4 1/3 in his first start. We'll look at that. And I've got a live bet on Major League Baseball that I like when we come back on the other side.
All right, we'll check it out when we come back. In-game live, prime time, right here on the grid on a fabulous Friday. Keep it where it is.
So I'm not sure Alabama is the team to knock them off from this second consecutive national championship chase. But what will be the key for the Crimson Tide if they can even cover a number?
That wing ball screen action, how you defend that is going to be a problem because a Donovan Clingan, it forces you to change so much what you do defensively if he's able to score inside.
Only on SportsGrid.
Talk all you want about how fat he is. No one can guard him. No one can stop him. He's a violent offender. He does whatever he wants in the low block and at the 10. He just does whatever he wants and scores at will, ad nauseum.
They're the Mike Tyson of college basketball. At some point, they're going to throw a haymaker. And when it connects, Pharrell, you're not getting up.
Pharrell Coast to Coast. Only on SportsGrid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid. Your 24/7 sports wagering network. The early line.
Magical and historic season in Lincoln, Nebraska continues.
He is the best player in the NBA, but also in the biggest moments where the national media is watching.
Newswire.
Something that we have never seen happen before with one of the iconic coaches in the game.
Pharrell Coast to Coast.
The team covers. It's automatic. It's every time. Not sometimes. It's every time.
Game time decisions.
Luka is actually far more dangerous from 3 on the road this year than at home.
This game here tonight, you may want to consider taking as many points as humanly possible.
In-game live, prime time.
We got not 1, but 2 coaches fired systems in place.
Sports Rage
This
Late
sort of
Night.
has letdown written all over it. It's going to be hard to match the emotion that they played with the other night.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
All right, welcome back in-game live, prime time here on the grid. Scott Wetzel, Dane Martinez until 10 p.m. Eastern time. We got Mark Zinno coming up in about 15 minutes. We'll keep an eye on the baseball as we were talking last segment. Some NBA, including, last week this would have been a phenomenal game. Still is a good game. We got Dallas and Golden State, the subject of my same game parlay tonight. All right, that's where we're going to go. A little same game SGP action. The line has shifted quite a bit, so obviously there's some players that are not playing that were supposed to be playing. And it worries me that Dallas is one of the teams that, -5 this afternoon when I put it in naturally. And now they're actually getting a point against Golden State, but that's okay. We put it in. We're going to stick to our guns. It's my philosophy. When main guys don't play, I'm guessing Luka's not playing tonight, or maybe it's Kyrie. I'll have to double check here. Game doesn't tip off for a little while, so we have time for that. But got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pieces. And if Luka doesn't play, well, then you might as well just blow the whole thing up because this is basically a Luka parlay. We're going to go with Dallas laying the 5. A little revenge factor here. I always kind of like to see, they played earlier in the week. Golden State won. Golden State he's out. Okay. Golden State had, you use it as a 2-person parlay. Then you use Dallas and the over. I still think Dallas wins, but no Luka. I was going to say Luka with points, rebounds, and assists on top of everything. So, all right, let's blow that up. And
let me ask you then, Scott. Let me ask you, because without Luka, I immediately look to the Kyrie Irving points prop. Okay.
That's not bad.
And that's 30.5. Do you think Kyrie trying to play Batman and Robin, do you think he can get over 30? And if not him, where else? Because, I agree with you. Luka's been absolutely amazing. 30-point triple doubles left and right, so without him, that's a huge piece of the pie, right? That's a lot of usage that's going away. So that's got to go somewhere. I see Kyrie 30.5. I see PJ Washington 15.5. Tim Hardaway Jr. 15.5. Someone's got to soak up that opportunity, right?
Yeah. I wonder real quickly on Luka, first off. He had 25 points, Dane, with about 4 minutes or so left in the third quarter, and he didn't score again in a close game. So now he played. He was in there in the end. I had the game on because I had the Hawks plus the 12.5. He was in there, but I wonder. I had a lot of guys in the podcast all ticked off because they played his over 26, and the guy had talk about a bad beat. Luka Doncic, right, one of the best shooters in the NBA by far, right? He's got 25 with 4 minutes and change left in the third quarter. And he doesn't score again when he plays the rest of the way. I mean, wow, you talk about it's never over until it's over. So. But yeah, I don't trust Kyrie. The problem with Kyrie, Dane, is that if they, get off to a slow start, I can see him just saying, all right, Luka's not playing. I don't need to win either. I won't play either. So they're elevating his numbers a little bit too much for me. To me, it'd be one of those other guys that you mentioned that, is going to have to step up somewhere, gets a little bit more playing time. Kyrie's going to get the same kind of playing time. Who's the guy that's going to get all of Luka's minutes? That's where I would kind of go.
Yeah, I can see Tim Hardaway Jr. being someone who steps up. The only thing with the kind of Kyrie throwing in the white towel thing is Dallas needs this, right? I think they're in the 5 seed in the West right now. Right. And don't get me wrong, I didn't love the idea of the play-in tournament when it came to fruition in the NBA, but it does now make almost every tier of the standings still fighting for something, right? You're either fighting for kind of home field advantage, or you're fighting in that 5-6 spot where Dallas is now. You're fighting to stay out of the play-in, right? And then all the way 7 through 10. So I do think it makes all of the tiers of the standings kind of interesting. And that's part of the reason I don't think, I think Dallas will give their A effort as much as you can without Luka Doncic in the lineup. The only other thing I want to tell you in a live kind of way, how you were wondering why South Carolina wasn't blowing the doors off NC State. Well, they are now up by 18 points towards the end of the third quarter. They're up. Wow. Now it's 21, Scott, 58-37. And that live line that was 7.5 that we didn't know about is now 21.5. So when we thought they would run away and hide in the second half, that is in fact happening.
Wow. We got scared by the line, right? I mean, we were both saying 4.5, and the goal was like 3.5, 4.5, maybe 7.5. Really wasn't that much off the line from the get-go. Wow. up 21. They played quarters in women's NCAA for some reason. So what was it? It was 30. I'll just look the box score. But they
at halftime, it was
like
32-31. It was 32-31 at halftime. Then they got out to about like 38-31. We saw it grow, and now it's 61-37. So that means in the third quarter, North Carolina State went from 31 to 37. They got 6 points, Scott, in the third quarter. Meanwhile, South Carolina showing their class, scoring, like 30-some-odd points
29.
in just this quarter, running away the way an undefeated number 1 overall seed should.
Wow, 29-6. They came out flying second. See, this is the start I thought South Carolina would have to begin the game. See, every once in a while, you just, you can't let the line scare you. And listen, there will be examples where it's going to work in your favor, but this is one where it worked against us, where it was just like a little, can't lay that. But yeah, now who wants to lay 23.5? You'd have a nice fat middle. That's for darn sure if you wanted to do that. Yeah. So, any other NBA games heading into tonight that piqued an interest with you?
It's a tough time in the season, Scott. You know what I mean? Because, like you said, there are some teams that are still going for it, but there's some teams that have mailed it really in. I've got my eye on this Boston-Sacramento game. It's at halftime. It's 54-50. What I believe, Boston is a 7.5-point favorite right now. You got competing narratives here. I'll ask you which one you go with, right? On the one hand, Boston has clinched the number 1 seed in the East. Boston can rest guys. To your point about mailing it in a little bit, they can coast the rest of the way if they wanted to. So that would be an argument to say, hey, maybe look at the Sacramento Kings plus 7.5. But I also saw this same Sacramento King team, Scott, last night at Madison Square Garden up by 21. And they let the Knicks come all the way back and get them. They looked piss poor in the second half. And now this is Sacramento on the second of a back-to-back. That's the way I think I'm going to go, going against Sacramento, a team that I saw give up the lead against the Knicks yesterday on the second of a back-to-back in a very challenging spot in Boston Garden here, or TD Garden, whatever it's called. So I think, like South Carolina, I think the Boston Celtics can pull away in the second half. They're up by 4 here at halftime, laying 7.5 live. I think this one's going to be another big margin the next time we check in.
Yeah, I think so too. You're right. They're playing for nothing as far as the East, but I think they need one more win, Dane, depending. There's 6 games left, and they're 6 up on Minnesota. Actually, they're 7 up on Minnesota. Minnesota's got 23 losses, so 7 in the loss column. I don't think they do have it throughout, even in the NBA Finals. Okay, I was going to say if they were like a half.
I think they've clinched the best record in the NBA.
Yeah, they got only 6 games left, so the most they would have is 22. That's too bad, because I was going to say if they needed one more win, then, boy, Celtics would love to be able to do that on a home court, right? Just let the fans celebrate a little bit. But you're right. They only have 16 losses with only 6 games left, so the most they could have is 22. So Boston's playing for nothing. But one thing about the Celtics, I will say, they do play their guys. If you look at the rundown of games played, their star players, they all basically play. So I don't think they're going to call off the Dogs. I really don't, and I like that one. Get yourself a couple points. It did lower from 9.5 to 9, but they're up 4, comfortable spot, and now you're only laying 7.5, so you put yourself an extra 1.5. The other one I liked a lot today was Miami, and that flipped from it didn't really flip, but it went from Miami -1 to I saw it go, Dane, to as high as -4. And I've been all over the Houston Rockets. I had this bet that we put in about 3 weeks ago. FanDuel offered 17-1 odds for Houston to make the play-in situation. And at that point, they had won 7 in a row, and then they ended up winning 10 in a row, and they got to within 1 in the standings. And I was thinking, all right, there's 12 games left, but they're basically done now. They faltered, and Golden State and the Lakers have played great. So last night was a huge, huge game, hosting Golden State. Kind of like a do-or-die situation for Houston, and they lost. So now they're basically mathematically eliminated. So whereas Miami's still fighting for something to stay out of the play-in situation. So the Heat went from -1 to -4. It's tied right now, late first quarter. So I'm going to keep an eye on that one. But I did like Miami, and I still like them laying 3.5.
Yeah, that makes sense. I remember going into that game, Rockets and Warriors, Draymond Green talking, what do you know, saying that they were going to kind of end Houston's hopes, and they wound up doing just that, right? I think Golden State scored in the 130s, and that does, I think, prove to be a death knell because now I think Golden State has like a 3-game lead on them for that 10th overall spot with, like you said, only 5 or 6 to play. So I think it becomes very tough for the Houston Rockets. They were streaking to get within range of Golden State, but Golden State, kind of showed up, knew they needed to get that game to fend off the young charging team and got what they needed. So I like Miami. Like you said, they're up by 2. They're laying 3.5. The only problem is they are on the road, but I don't think that matters as much with a veteran team like Miami. They are coming off a back-to-back as well, though. I think they were in Philly last night. So back-to-back road games for the Miami Heat, if that's anything that matters to you. But I'm with you. It's 3.5 right now, and I think they can win by more than that. I think Miami will get a working margin similar to South Carolina and similar to Boston.
Yeah. How about this one? Orlando, double-digit favorite real quickly, which they probably weren't really supposed to be, but they were. They're down 15 at Charlotte, now getting 4.5 midway through the third.
Yeah, that's a surprise. That's a surprise to me. I would always think about getting Orlando to come back on one side if you can, getting the 4.5. They'll make a run.
4.5. Well, they don't give you any. Well, listen, they were a double-digit favorite, right? But down 15, they're only giving you 4.5. Yikes. All right, Mark Siddle will join us. We'll do a little NCAA basketball coming up next here on the Grid.
So I'm not sure Alabama is the team to knock them off from this second consecutive national championship chase. But what will be the key for the Crimson Tide if they can even cover a number?
That wing ball screen action, how you defend that is going to be a problem because Donovan Clingan forces you to change so much what you do defensively if he's able to score inside.
Only on SportsGrid.
Talk all you want about how fat he is. No one can guard him. No one can stop him. He's a violent offender. He does whatever he wants in the low block and at the 10. He just does whatever he wants and scores at will, ad nauseum.
They're the Mike Tyson of college basketball. At some point, they're going to throw a haymaker. And when it connects, Pharrell, you're not getting up.
Pharrell Coast to Coast. Only on SportsGrid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid. Your 24/7 sports wagering network. The early line.
Magical and historic season in Lincoln, Nebraska continues.
He is the best player in the NBA, but also in the biggest moments where the national media is watching.
Newswire.
Something that we have never seen happen before with one of the iconic coaches in the game.
Pharrell Coast to Coast.
The team covers. It's automatic. It's every time. Not sometimes. It's every time.
Game time decisions.
Luka is actually far more dangerous from 3 on the road this year than at home.
This game here tonight, you may want to consider taking as many points as humanly possible.
InGame Live. PrimeTime.
We got not 1, but 2 coaches fired systems in place.
Sports Rage
This
Late
sort
Night.
of has letdown written all over it. It's going to be hard to match the emotion that they played with the other night.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Hi, welcome back. In-game live, prime time here on the grid. Hour number one of our 2-hour extravaganza. Scott Wetzel, Dane Martinez until 10 p.m. Eastern time. Watching the world of sports, and all eyes will be on the NCAA Final Four tomorrow. We get the women's semifinals tonight. We get the men's tomorrow in Arizona. Joining us now to talk a little hoops, our good buddy Mark Zinno, who you see all the time right here on Sundays on the grid. What's going on, Mark? How are you tonight, bud?
Scott, Dave, great to be with you guys. I'm actually buckling in for the women's Final Four right now, so enjoying a good game between South Carolina and NC State and looking forward to the next one.
Did you have a play on South Carolina? Or, Dane and I were banting back and forth at halftime. We were upset the line was still 7.5. And we said, no, we're not going to do it. And then lo and behold, they outscored them by 150 in the third quarter, and they're leading now by 20+. So who'd you have in that game? And
I didn't have anything in the first game. I'm looking forward to the second game. I think it's Iowa in the over. I think it's correlated a little bit. I mean, look, if UConn's going to win this game, they've got to stop Caitlin Clark. They've got to slow down the Iowa offense. And the only chance to beat them is to keep them in the mid to low 70s. And if that's the case, it's an 80 to 75 kind of final. And I think this thing stays under. I mean, it's strange that the LSU Iowa total was at like 160.5, and this one's 2 points higher. So in order to tell you what they think of the UConn offense here and their ability to score, but this all boils down to, can you slow down the Iowa offense and Caitlin Clark?
Hey, Mark, you mentioned a total and you mentioned UConn, so I want to ask you that kind of question about tomorrow. All right. I see a total of UConn and Alabama of 161.5. Now, I know Alabama can score. I know they're going to shoot a ton of threes. They score 89 points a game in the tournament. But on the flip side, UConn is just putting people in straitjackets left and right. I think they're only giving up like 50 some odd points in the tournament. So which kind of game do you think it's going to be? Because if it's a UConn kind of game, this total is criminally high, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And look, I mean, it's obviously correlated. If Alabama's going to cover this number, it's going to go over. It's the only way for them to stay close. But I've said repeatedly about this Final Four, there's no reason to wait the full 40 minutes of these games out. If you like the dogs, take them in the first half, because guess what? If they're not covering early, they're definitely not covering late. Like there's not a game script I can really see happening where UConn is trailing by 7 or 8 at halftime, and then they get back in it. I mean, look, they can. They made 10 threes in the second half against Clemson, but Clemson's defense is nowhere near as good as UConn. So if Alabama isn't hitting threes early and UConn is just controlling the pace and being able to score on an Alabama defense, and I don't like it when people say Alabama doesn't play defense. They just don't prioritize it. They prioritize offense. I mean, they're a very good three-point shooting defending team. They're top 40 in the nation, three-point field goal percentage defense, because they're long and they're athletic and they can close out on shooters. But if they're not making threes on their end, they're going to have to play a different level of defense in order to slow down UConn. And I don't like that game script for Alabama. They've got to get up early. I mean, the idea is this, guys. If you are ahead by like 4 or 5 at halftime, you're in great shape against UConn. If you're tied, you're in bad shape. If you're losing by 4 or 5, you're dead in the water, in my opinion. You're just not going to come back on that team. They're too good on both ends of the floor.
Is the number, though, so high, Mark, that it's I was telling Dane earlier, I kind of equated to Kansas City, the Chiefs, this past Super Bowl run, where Mahomes was an underdog every single round except the first round against the Dolphins. But it was just like, it got to a point where it's just like, well, I'm not going to bet against Kansas City. They shouldn't be an underdog. They are, because they didn't have a great season, but I'm just going to bet them, and what happens, they end up winning the championship. So UConn, to me, like, they shouldn't be this big of a favorite, but how are you going to bet against them the way they're playing, right? I mean,
look, you've had to pay a premium on UConn this entire tournament. And by a premium, I'm not even talking about odds. I'm talking about points. Like, right. I made this number 9.5 or 10 when my numbers came out and these two teams were playing each other. And at 11.5, I said, okay, I get it. That's the premium you've been paying the whole time. You go back to the San Diego State game where the line opened at 9.5, and then it was 10, 10.5. It was 12.5 by tip-off. And what happened? They crushed them and covered the number. So odds makers are telling the public right now, look, you want to keep riding this UConn train? We're going to make you pay a premium on it. And sharp guys and smart people are going to realize that the number is off, and they're going to go back and bet the other side. And that's really what the books are hoping for, because I don't think you can bet Alabama full game here. I mean, I've said repeatedly, the best way to play these Final Fours from a value standpoint is you take NC State to win it all, and you put another bet on Alabama to win it all. And if either one squeezes through, you're in a prime hedge situation where you're going to make money on the final game, because in reality, betting on either one of the dogs straight up, I think, is a less likely proposition. If either one of these teams is going to cover, there's a good chance they're going to win outright. That's just the kind of the way I see it. I mean, I've said this since the Sweet 16. Forget about the number. Just pick the winner. It's kind of like the NFL playoffs because the favorite's going to cover or the dog's going to win outright. If you've got enough here to put on Alabama and you think they can cover this number, you should sprinkle some on the money line because I don't know if they cover the number. I mean, is there a game script where UConn only wins by 4? Yes, there is. I just don't think it's likely that it unfolds that way.
So let me ask you, Mark, here about a little Purdue and NC State in the other matchup that we're going to see tomorrow. And I want to ask you specifically around Zach Edey. Zach Edey goes absolutely bonkers back and forth against Dalton Knecht in the Elite Eight. He puts up 40. Now with NC State, could this be the first time where there's actually maybe some bodies that can trouble Edey at all? We know about DJ Burns and getting looks at the NFL. He could be a lineman or a tight end, the way he moves. Mohamed Dara as well. Is there going to be any kind of struggle for Zach Edey? I see his points prop at 26.5. So what do you think about that game? Will Edey be stifled at all? And what do you think about his points prop at 26.5?
I mean, I look at it from the other side more than anything. It's like DJ Burns has had a lot of room in the middle to work with because nobody's been there. I look at it more defensively. Like DJ Burns isn't going to have any room to move underneath the net. He's finally met his match, and he's not going to be able to spin around guys. Edey's just going to put his arm up and block shots. It's not like we see DJ Burns backing guys down a lot and dunking the ball. I mean, he's moving guys around a little bit and taking these little hook shots and these little floaters. That ain't going to fly with Zach Edey in the middle. So I think the bigger challenge is for DJ Burns. I mean, Edey, the thing is this, even with DJ Burns there, I'd be curious to see if NC State has enough guts and enough balls, excuse my French, to leave Burns and Edey one-on-one because that is a recipe for disaster. We've seen it. You have to double Edey, and what is Edey smart enough to do as soon as he gets doubled is kick the ball out, which is why Purdue in the second half of these games in the Sweet 16 and Elite Eight has been able to pull away because they are wearing defenses down. You can only chase in and out so much from the three-point line to inside to go get Zach Edey before your legs start to tire in the second half. Again, it's another first-half player. If NC State can't keep this within 5 or 6, I don't know that they're going to have a shot. I mean, look, if Edey doesn't get to 26 or 27 in this matchup, Purdue might be in trouble. I mean, genuinely in trouble of losing the game unless everybody else from the shooters on the outside are just having, unconscious night shooting. But he's got to be a big part of what they do. It is a fat number. I mean, could Edey still have 23 and 18 rebounds and Purdue could dominate? Yes, absolutely. That absolutely could happen. But again, it's another guy after a 40-point performance that odds makers are going, you're going to pay a premium on this because if he goes off again, there's no reason he won't get 30. I think DJ Burns is the one we should be asking the question about. Can he do what he does on the offensive end? Because I don't know that one-on-one anybody can stop Edey given his size.
How about this one, Mark? I love looking for little loopholes in these lines. There's just way too many bets now. So I wake up in the morning looking for that's a bad line. So I looked on one site. You can get Purdue to win the national championship at +2 to 1. Or you can bet Zach Edey to be the player of the Final Four. They don't do it for championship game. They do it for Final Four at +190. So, yeah, you're getting yourself a 10-cent discount if you take Edey to be the MVP, but I think that's well worth it because I could clearly see this guy going for 25, 30 points, 15, 20 rebounds, and UConn beat them, but Edey still being the MVP, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's not often that you get the most outstanding player for a guy who didn't win at all. I mean, I can't recall if it's happened. I mean, I think when I look at the futures bets outside of Alabama and NC State to win it all, the only other future bet I really look at is the look-ahead line for UConn and Purdue, which is UConn -5.5. That seems like a discount. So, I make that number closer to 7, like 6, 6.5, maybe even 7 between those two teams. And I think the odds makers are saying when we get these two big teams, these two juggernauts going against each other, that they're going to price it a little more normally. And look, if Purdue has the game we think they're going to have against NC State, I think they're going to look a lot more powerful heading into the national championship game than UConn would against Alabama, because Alabama's shooting may keep them in the game. It may be something that UConn is not prepared to deal with. And if they're making threes and they're raining down, it's the ultimate equalizer. So I think that's sort of probably the one look-ahead line for the championship that I look at and go, if UConn had 5.5, when was the last time UConn was favored by 5.5? Like, you got to go back to on the road at St. John's, in late December, early January. I think that's the last time it kind of came up. I mean, they were a 5.5 point favorite against Marquette, in Marquette
in the tournament.
And yeah, you know, and it's just like, okay, so is Purdue that much better than Marquette? I think so. And that line seems a little bit short.
Hey, Mark, first of all, I think Derrick Rose was the first name that comes to mind that could have taken down MOP and not even have won in the championship or in the Final Four. But you're talking about UConn. Let me ask you them in a historical perspective, right? So they're going on a 30-0 run in the Elite Eight. They're double-digit favorites. We're talking about this all the time. Their average margin of victory in the tournament in the last 2 years has been double digits, right? They're going back to the Final Four, which is, I think it's the Joakim Noah teams, the Florida teams in like 06, 07, which are the first to do this. Give me, where does this UConn team, with Hurley as the coach, sit in a historical context? Are they as good as some of these teams that we remember, back-to-back champions, quasi-dynasties of the past, the UNLVs, the Dukes of years gone by? Could this UConn team, if they win a second straight championship, which they are minus money to do they belong in that kind of historical conversation?
I think individually this team does, as one of the greatest college basketball teams that we've seen. This year's UConn team is much better than last year's. I don't think there's any debate about that. I think this year's team would smoke last year's team if the two of them played. I'm not ready to start making these grandiose assumptions about whether, you know, Danny Hurley is one of the greatest coaches of all time and whether this UConn team is a dynasty and everything. I mean, this is a world in college hoops right now where Danny Hurley has taken two completely different teams to the Final Four. And that's a credit to him, but it's also one of those things where it's not that hard to build a champion in college sports anymore due to the transfer portal. And so, I mean, there's a world where a lot of transfers and a lot of things can happen to UConn. They could miss the tournament altogether next year. Like, would that shock anybody in the landscape of college sports right now with the transfers and everything else? I mean, sure, obviously they can lock and reload with a bunch of transfers on their own, but that wouldn't surprise me. And I don't think it's a referendum on the UConn program. I just think it's a referendum on college sports and the transfer portal and these young kids going places for different reasons that aren't about building. I mean, think about what Billy Donovan had to do with Florida. He had to build a program. He had to recruit guys and build them and grow them into that sort of champion. That's not the case anymore. It's nonstop free agency in college sports across the board. So if you're a good recruiter from a free agent standpoint, you can get guys in who can play. So I think there's pluses and minuses on both sides.
If I told you one of the favorites tomorrow was going to lose, which one would it be?
Believe it or not, I think it would be UConn. I don't think NC State has the look. NC State, guys, for all intents and purposes, does NC State really belong here? Like, at some point in time, there's got to be a regression to what NC State really was all year long. The run is fantastic.
They got lucky in the first round of the ACC tournament, right? Like, in order to just get the shot.
They should thank Tony Bennett for being here because they wouldn't be without it. So I think Alabama is more susceptible. We know the three-point shot, you know, changes the game. And if Alabama can make them at a 35-40% clip, they're going to be in great shape.
Mark, great job as always, my friend. Check them out Sunday nights here on the Grid. Best of luck with your bets.
So I'm not sure Alabama is the team to knock them off from this second consecutive national championship chase. But what will be the key for the Crimson Tide if they can even cover a number?
That wing ball screen action, how you defend that is going to be a problem because of Donovan Clingan, it forces you to change so much what you do defensively if he's able to score inside.
Only on SportsGrid.
Talk all you want about how fat he is. No one can guard him. No one can stop him. He's a violent offender. He does whatever he wants in the low block and at the 10. He just does whatever he wants and scores at will, ad nauseum.
They're the Mike Tyson of college basketball. At some point, they're going to throw a haymaker. And when it connects, Pharrell, you're not getting up.
Pharrell Coast to Coast. Only on SportsGrid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid, your 24/7 sports wagering network. The early line.
Magical and historic season in Lincoln, Nebraska continues.
He is the best player in the NBA, but also in the biggest moments where the national media is watching.
Newswire.
Something that we have never seen happen before with one of the iconic coaches in the game.
Pharrell, coast to coast.
The team covers. It's automatic. It's every time. Not sometimes. It's every time.
Game time decisions.
Luka is actually far more dangerous from three on the road this year than at home.
This game here tonight, you may want to consider taking as many points as humanly possible.
InGame Live, PrimeTime.
We got not one, but two coaches fired systems in place.
Sports Rage
This
Late
sort
Night.
of has letdown written all over it. It's going to be hard to match the emotion that they played with the other night.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
All right, welcome back in Game Live, PrimeTime, wrapping up hour number one. Thanks to Mark Zitto for joining us, doing a little college basketball with him with the men's Final Four tomorrow, obviously. In the meantime, we still got a whole bunch of baseball, little hockey, and NBA to get to, including our Black Cloud. All right, a little bit of a surprising team here that we're going to use in the Black Cloud. We're going to go to NBA. Tips off in about an hour or so. Minnesota at the Phoenix Suns. I think most people think the Phoenix Suns are a high-scoring Kevin Garnett team. Up and down the court they go, right? Not really. It's actually just the opposite. We're going to go under 216.5 Minnesota at Phoenix. Why? Suns 15-7 under last 22 games. Phoenix, 19-7 under last 26 home games. Phoenix, 36-16 under last 52 games after allowing 100 points like they did their last game. And even Minnesota, 21-17 under in their road games this season. So, again, the perception, Phoenix, run, gun, outscore everybody 130-125. It's not the case with this Phoenix Suns team. So, getting a halfway decent number. 2 months ago, I'd say no, but the way the scoring is stopped in the NBA, 216.5 is a decent number. It's a rare Friday night under. They do play defense in Phoenix. So give me under 216.5. Love the play. Double the bet. This is the play where we double our normal bet and keep your fingers crossed because it should come in. What do you think, Dane?
I like that, Scott. The other part is the Minnesota Timberwolves have the best defense in the Western Conference. They give up, I think, 106 points a game, and that's even without Karl Anthony Towns. So I do like that, and it's really, can you trust Booker, Beal, Durant? It looks great on paper, but they still have some figuring out to do. So I like the Minnesota defense as well. I'm going to ride the Black Cloud and tell you on this under.
There you go. Make it even blacker. Absolutely. There's no way this thing's going to win now. I do hope we get a lot of scoring in these games this last week just because my goal is to bet unders in the postseason. We'll talk about that when we come back because I think it's going to be a real flip in the postseason. All right, hour number 2 coming up next.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Welcome back. It is InGame Live Prime Time, hour number 2 of our 2-hour extravaganza. Scott Wetzel, Dane Martinez for another full hour right here on the grid. We got Cam Stewart coming on in about 40 minutes. We'll do some, everything with Cam. You just basically say, hi, Cam, how you doing? And he'll talk for the next 40 minutes with all kind of bets. So we'll have a little bit of everything with him. We got NBA, we got baseball, a little hockey as well. And I don't want to jinx it, Dane. I dare I even bring this up, but your same game parlay off to a pretty good start, is it not?
Yeah, it is. Thank you for putting the black cloud on my same game parlay. But so far, it is early. We're in the top of the 4th. But remember, I needed Peralta to get 7 or more strikeouts. He's already got 6 through 3 innings of work. So that looks good. And the last time I checked, it was 2-0 Milwaukee. So remember, I need them on the money line. They are winning the game. And I need it to be a relatively low-scoring game. So that is happening so far. But the most encouraging point is the fact that Peralta already has 6 punch-outs. I'll also let you know, we were talking about Boston. They have grown the margin as well. They are up by 8, it looks like, on Sacramento midway through the 3rd. We pointed that one out. And South Carolina does, in fact, advance to the national championship. They wound up winning by 19 points, Scott, 78-59.
Yeah, there you go. That 7.5 was a gift. So now we start the second game, I guess, in about a half hour or so. I do like the over in that game. Probably, you know what? You want to give me UConn. It's women's basketball. Who really follows it that closely? But you want to give me UConn, Oriema, and points. I'll generally take that against anybody. But I do think, Dave, we're going to get a lot of points in this game. I don't think one team's going to go into a shell. Now, they may just miss their shots, but you have that little caveat of both teams going mano-a-mano. Like Gino's not backing down to anybody, right? And Caitlin Clark and company, they're not backing down. So the game plan will be just score, and let's see who scores the most to win versus I'm going to counterattack this one, and I'm going to walk the ball up the court. You're not going to get that tonight with this game. So I like the over in that second game.
Yeah, so let me ask you about this. The prop on Caitlin Clark. You're great at this. What do you think her points number is that they're hanging for Caitlin Clark in this game? Remember, I think she got 41 or 42 in the Elite 8 game. You're talking about this being maybe a slightly different one. What do you think the number is? I'll tell you, and then we can talk about because I think I have a play on this one. What do you think the number they're hanging is?
I'm guessing, and they don't have that unfortunately here in New York with FanDuel, but I'm thinking 28 and a half. Well, they'll be at half a point. So 27 and a half, 28 and a half, pretty close to 30.
Scott, it's 34 and a half.
Whoa.
It's 34 and a half. And listen,
wow,
she has been phenomenal, okay? Breaking records left and right. But I'm going under on this one. I would take the over on her assist number. Okay, I take the over on her assist number. I think Gino is going to try to force them to get the ball out of her hands. They're going to run the double team quick. And the beauty of Caitlin Clark is she makes the right basketball play. She gets her teammates involved. But I think that's going to be the hat she has to wear. Now, can she go off? Will she hit some clutch threes, maybe to stop a UConn run or something like that? Probably, but I think she's going to have to get her teammates involved in this one. I think she's going to get a lot of pressure. I think her assist number is the way to go. I'm going under 34 and a half. I know it's Caitlin Clark. I know she could put up 40 at any point in time, but Scott, 34 and a half is a little rich for my blood.
That is a lot. I had too much respect. It's funny, I saw Uriema yesterday or 2 days ago, whenever it was, and he was asked about stopping Caitlin Clark, and he said, well, I called a bunch of coaches and no one returned my phone call, so I guess we can't stop her. We're just going to have to outscore her, this and that, right? And I think myself, you don't have 5,000 national championships with that kind of approach. So I don't know who's the best defender on UConn, but I would be surprised if they just let her. Well, listen, she could shoot from half court. I'll grant you that. But you know what? Pick her up at half court then. Whoever the best defender is, if she goes for 35, if she hits 35, I'd be impressed. I really would, because you're going against, probably the best coach in women's college basketball, right? And Uriema. For him to go into that game just thinking we're going to outscore them like that, like not even try and stop her, I'd be surprised. A lot of points, 34 and a half, 35 points.
Her assist number is 9.5. Okay, minus 136 to the over. So the books think she's going to get double-digit assists, and that's kind of the way I think this plays out. I think they're switching, they're running double teams to her. And listen, she's a great playmaker, okay? But I think that's the way in order for Iowa to get it done, I think she is going to need to have double-digit assists. Can she get 30? Maybe. And let's put it this way, Scott. I mean, 31-11 would be a phenomenal game in the Final Four, right? But that still doesn't get you home on this points prop. So right now, I know it's Caitlin Clark. We'll watch this, or at least the first half here in the second hour here of IGL. But I would go under the 34.5.
Yeah, crazy night. Not crazy, but one of those nights in baseball tonight. I say that because you had the Dodgers losing. They lost. A decent team in the Chicago Cubs, but still, you got the Dodgers losing. You had the Rockies winning, beat Tampa Bay 10-7, and there was one more. A's did.
The Braves are down. Spencer Strider and the Braves are down 5-2. You can get them plus 280 on the money line. A lot of game left. They got a runner on second in the fifth inning. They got, 5 more at-bats. They're down by 3 runs. You can get them plus 280 on the money line against the Diamondbacks, plus 2.5 on the run line.
Maybe 3. Worried to be. I mean, look, it's one weekend, right? But they would be 3-3. Any concern with Atlanta if they were to lose today?
No, I think Atlanta and the Dodgers are a cut above in the National League. I also, did you see Ronald Acuna when they were playing the Chicago White Sox? The man was cold. The man was with the hand warmers and stuff. I think, you give them a little while and they'll be just fine. I like that rotation. I like that lineup a little bit too much. I still think they run away with the NL East.
How about the line today, Dane? Now, listen, I get it. It's Strider, and they're at home. I get that. But they were close to 3-1 against the Arizona Diamondbacks, who went to the World Series last year, right? So they were almost 3-1 against Arizona. We had this conversation with Dave pertaining to the Dodgers, but if they're 3-1, you're nearly 3-1 against Arizona. What are they going to be against, the Washington Nationals or the Oakland A's when they play them, or pick another god awful team? I really think we're going to see some 5-1s this year. Minus 500.
Listen, I think a lot of that was Spencer Strider on the bump for the Braves as well, right? He's like the Cy Young favorite. So it's not only Atlanta, but I think the Strider matchup was what part of that big line was. That's why I was so surprised when Arizona got off to an early lead against a prohibitive NL Cy Young favorite.
Yeah. Reds are down 2-1 against the Mets. The bad news. The good news is they do have 3 runners on. Bases loaded, but 2 outs. And I'm guessing they didn't score because FanDuel has them at plus 260. Yeah, innings over. Yeah.
Again, Ellie De La Cruz probably struck out again.
Oh, he was batting. Yeah. Wow, he struck out apparently.
Of course he did.
Wow. Well, we'll update the De La Cruz strikeout numbers. You better get out your calculator when we come back. InGame Live, PrimeTime.
So I'm not sure Alabama is the team to knock them off from this second consecutive national championship chase. But what will be the key for the Crimson Tide if they can even cover a number?
That wing ball screen action, how you defend that is going to be a problem because of Donovan Clingan, it forces you to change so much what you do defensively if he's able to score inside.
Only on SportsGrid.
Talk all you want about how fat he is. No one can guard him. No one can stop him. He's a violent offender. He does whatever he wants in the low block and at the 10. He just does whatever he wants and scores at will, ad nauseum.
They're the Mike Tyson of college basketball. At some point, they're going to throw a haymaker. And when it connects, Pharrell, you're not getting up.
Pharrell Coast to Coast. Only on SportsGrid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid. Your 24/7 sports wagering network. The early line.
Magical and historic season in Lincoln, Nebraska continues.
He is the best player in the NBA, but also in the biggest moments where the national media is watching.
Newswire.
Something that we have never seen happen before with one of the iconic coaches in the game.
Pharrell, coast to coast.
The team covers. It's automatic. It's every time. Not sometimes. It's every time.
Game time decisions.
Luka is actually far more dangerous from three on the road this year than at home.
This game here tonight, you may want to consider taking as many points as humanly possible.
In-game live. Prime time.
We got not one, but two coaches fired systems in place.
Sports Rage
This
Late
sort
Night.
of has letdown written all over it. It's going to be hard to match the emotion that they played with the other night.
It's smarter to be on Sports Grid.
All right, welcome back. In-game live, prime time here on the grid. Scott Wetzel, Dane Martinez for another 50 minutes or so. We got Cam Stewart joining us in about a half hour. We'll go over a bunch of things with him. But we last left you talking a little baseball, Dane. I just want to bring this up because Dela Cruz did strike out with the bases loaded for Cincinnati, so he ends that threat. So they continue on with the Mets leading the Reds at 2-1. But we talked about his strikeout total. You got the numbers there in front of you. You could rattle those off here in a sec. But he strikes out so much, or at least this year anyway, that, you got to use that to your advantage. Like little things, all right, how are you going to utilize Dela Cruz strikeouts? You can't bet on him to strike out, can you? I don't think you can. But you can bet, though, the opposing pitcher's strikeout total. And you go into a game with a guy who's striking out literally 50% of the time, right? I mean, it's almost an automatic over strikeout total on whoever the Mets are pitching tomorrow.
Yeah, no, it's really interesting. And by the way, it depends on the state, Scott. In some places, you can live bet on the strikeout. I know,
right,
because as a Yankee fan, during Joey Gallo's stint, I used to make money hand over fist betting the Joey Gallo live strikeout. But let me tell you this, because from the fantasy community, this was a big question on Elly De La Cruz, okay? He has all of the kind of raw athleticism. He's got the power. He's got the speed. Last year, he had like a 38% strikeout rate. This year, it's even worse, Scott. Literally, going into tonight, he had 24 at-bats on a young season and 12 strikeouts. Scott's not exaggerating. Half the time, Elly De La Cruz strikes out, and he's got at least another one tonight. And so I think it's really interesting. The Reds had a lot of infielders, Scott, going into the season, but then Matt McClain got banged up. If you remember, Noelvi Marte got popped for a PED suspension of 80 games. They had a lot of options, and there were people that thought that if Elly got off to this kind of start with this kind of strikeout rate, he could have gotten sent down to the minors, but the Reds just don't have as many options. And you say, oh, that's crazy. There have been cases of other players. I think Acuna once got sent down just to kind of get a little bit of a wake-up call. So keep your eye out on Elly. I know the talent is definitely there, but if he keeps on striking out literally half the time, the Reds are going to have to do something.
Yeah, he's got two tonight. He's 2 strikeouts and 4 at-bats. I mean,
maintaining the 50% strikeout rate.
I wonder what the record. Yet he's sitting 250, though. Although it's kind of like a pitcher, right? I mean, can't tell you how many times I bet an over in a strikeout pitcher, and I see he left in the 4th inning after giving up 7 runs, and I think, all right, I lost my bet. And then you find out he got 7 strikeouts. Like he gave up 7 runs, but he struck out 7. It's kind of like De La Cruz as a hitter. He's either getting a hit or he's striking out. I mean, for a guy that has that many strikeouts to be able to hit 250, which again is not great, but I would think the guy, if he's swinging and missing that often, is hitting like $150 or so, but he's actually hitting 250.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I wonder if he gets back up in the lineup, remind me. I'm going to go check to see what the number is. Like, you've got to hang even money for him to strike out. It's an even money proposition, Scott, for him to strike out. Like when he's on the on-deck circle next time around, I know you guys have the goal horn, but you got to let us know somehow because the best bet of the night may be the Ellie De La Cruz live strikeout number. I'm going to look at it if the time flips over again, and it may not because we're in the 8th inning, so that may be his last at-bat of the 9th. But, Scott, you have homework, okay? Because I'm not with you every night, although someone just hit me up on Twitter saying it was great to see the two of us together again on InGame Live, so I appreciate that. But that's going to be your homework, okay? Whoever you're with, if they are in a state where you can bet those live strikeout props, you got to at least check to see what the Ellie De La Cruz number is when the Reds are playing and ride it until she bucks you.
Yeah, I will tell you, Santiago Espinal is plus 370. Just to kind of give you like a correlation when we get to, hopefully he'll get up again in the 9th inning. We need to get the 4 guys to get on that, Will Benson's plus 175. So you're generally getting almost like 2-1, 3-1 on some of these guys. So we'll see how low he is. And I'll tell you the other goofy thing, again, you just utilize these things in your favor while you can. They do offer on FanDuel, at least here in New York, the entire bottom of the 8th inning. So I'm assuming they'll do the same thing for the 9th. And they offer you 3 strikeouts in an inning at 10-1. If you know De La Cruz is batting, then there's one right there. So if they offer like 2 strikeouts at 4 or 5-1 or 3 strikeouts at 10-1, it's worth a couple shekels.
I'd love to see that when the heart of the Yankees order is coming up,
right?
when it's Judge Stanton and Rizzo or something like that. I wonder what kind of numbers, or Gleyber Torres. Like there's some teams that you could definitely attack that. It seems like something that should be kind of a nice price, but there's the meat of some teams' orders where it's an interesting value proposition.
Yeah, it really is. So Mets tacked on a run, Jeff McNeil home run. So it's now 3-1 headed to the bottom of the 8th inning. So maybe the Mets are going to win. I knew that line was fishy. Minus 120 at home, green on the hill. And look at this. The Mets are maybe going to win this game. Still 2 at bat. You want to take a little flyer on the Reds, plus 420. Philly's shutting out the Nationals.
Their bullpen was taxed. They used 8 arms in the doubleheader yesterday. Okay, so we'll see about that. I want to tell you because I don't have that many opportunities to talk to you. I like this Cutter Crawford kid that's on the bump for your boys tonight.
Yes.
I like the Red Sox tonight on the road, minus 110. Crawford looks like he could take a step forward, and he's on the hill tonight for the Red Sox. So I would be remiss if I didn't tell you. I think that kid's got a little something, and I like Boston tonight.
They got a nice little pitching staff. That Pavetta's doing great. I mean, eventually he'll turn into Nick Pivetta, but he's actually pitching pretty well this year and had a decent year last year. The Bio kid, people say it's Bello, but it's actually Bio. He's young. Tanner Hawk is pretty good. Crawford's pretty good. I don't know if they'll make the playoffs, Dane, but I do think they'll hit over 500 and actually compete for a playoff spot. And with the Red Sox, it's been a little while since they fortified their team at the trade deadline. That's the goal, for a team like the Red Sox and a lot of these other teams. Just do well until the end of July, then go spend some money. And I think they really can be a surprise team. And when they all come together, Whitlock is good as well. They actually have a halfway decent young pitching staff, Boston.
Yeah, and that's even with Giolito getting, being down for the year. That was their big acquisition, right, that they were going to bring in, and he was going to try to anchor this staff. I saw Hawk, again, struck out like 10 against Oakland in his first start. And these kind of guys, the Pavettas, you said it yourself, eventually he'll turn back into Nick Pivetta. And I don't know how long Cutter Crawford is going to do this. So I can see them, kind of getting off to a hot start and then fading a little bit in the dog days of summer. But so far, they are rounding into form, and that offense is definitely going to be there.
Yeah. Anything else baseball-wise before we move on to the NBA? We had Kansas City and the White Sox. Who wants to lay minus 250 on Kansas City? Astros getting shut out 5-0.
The only thing for me would be if you want to come back on the Atlanta Braves. The Atlanta Braves are the better team. They are at home. You can get them at around 3-1, down by 3, with a man in scoring position, bottom of the 6th, and now Ronald Acuna up. So this is going to be the top of the Braves order here, with a man on. It is within the realm of possibility this league gets cut real quick. Plus 240 is an interesting number. And on the run line, you can get the Braves plus a 1.5. at plus money, even if the Braves don't come all the way back. But as you know, 5th and 6th inning is when teams usually score. I like a runner in scoring position with one out for Acuna and the top of the Braves order. I wouldn't be surprised if Atlanta scores here, and then that plus 260, that 300 is gone by the next time we check in.
Yeah, even like you said, even if you went conservatives, they're giving you odds at plus 1.5 runs. Now, listen, they're down 3, but still, I'd almost rather have plus 1.5 runs plus odds than plus 2.5 runs laying, a minus 2 to 1 or something along those lines. So you're right. They got 5 at bats. 6th inning, 7th, 8th, 9th with 4 at bats. Plenty of time for them to come back. You won't see the Braves plus 2 to 1 or more too often at home, even down 5-2. So plenty of time for that one. Milwaukee 3-0 over the Mariners. So clearly Seattle lose. Castillo on the hill didn't have it tonight. That's it for sure.
Peralta's still in. I got to see how many strikeouts he has. How many strikeouts Peralta has, because he's definitely doing all right for me so far. And we got the under right now. We got Milwaukee. Peralta, 7 strikeouts. We're almost home, Scotty.
Not bad.
So I'm not sure Alabama is the team to knock them off from this second consecutive national championship chase. But what will be the key for the Crimson Tide if they can even cover a number?
That wing ball screen action, how you defend that is going to be a problem, because of Donovan Clingan, it forces you to change so much what you do defensively if he's able to score inside.
Only on SportsGrid.
Talk all you want about how fat he is. No one can guard him. No one can stop him. He's a violent offender. He does whatever he wants in the low block and at the 10. He just does whatever he wants and scores at will, ad nauseum.
They're the Mike Tyson of college basketball. At some point, they're going to throw a haymaker. And when it connects, Pharrell, you're not getting up.
Pharrell Coast to Coast. Only on SportsGrid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid. Your 24/7 sports wagering network. The early line.
Magical and historic season in Lincoln, Nebraska continues.
He is the best player in the NBA, but also in the biggest moments where the national media is watching.
Newswire.
Something that we have never seen happen before with one of the iconic coaches in the game.
Pharrell Coast to Coast.
The team covers. It's automatic. It's every time. Not sometimes. It's every time.
Game time decisions.
Luka is actually far more dangerous from 3 on the road this year than at home.
This game here tonight, you may want to consider taking as many points as humanly possible.
InGame Live. PrimeTime.
We got not 1, but 2 coaches fired systems in place.
Sports Rage
This
Late
sort
Night.
of has letdown written all over it. It's going to be hard to match the emotion that they played with the other night.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
All right, welcome back. In-game live, prime time here on the grid. Scott Wetzel and Dane Martinez. Hour number 2 of our 2-hour extravaganza, looking and banning on the world of sports. It's a beautiful thing. Little NBA Dane here. We mentioned it, right, with the Celtics. They're a machine. I don't know how they're going to blow it this year, but somehow, some way they will. 97-79 as they pulled away against the Sacramento Kings, who were playing for a lot. Celtics playing for nothing. But Boston, they've covered 8 of their last 9 at home, and it looks like it's going to be 9 of the last 10 because they're up 17, 18, 19, 18 points now, laying 17.5. You got the dopey Milwaukee Bucks. I know it, laying 14.5. I did do it with them, but they're actually losing at home to god-awful Toronto. Now you can get the Bucks down 3, laying only 5.5. I don't know what the money line was on that. I should have looked. I'm guessing you could have had Toronto. Yeah. You remember what it was for Toronto?
No, but it was a big number.
It
was a big number. It had to be. But this Milwaukee team, Scott, I can't figure them out. And quite frankly, I'm not backing them going into the playoffs. They're losing games like this against Toronto. They're losing at Washington. Ever since Doc Rivers has gotten there, I think they're still figuring out the Giannis and Damian Lillard kind of experiment. And I'm not backing them. I can see them losing early in the playoffs. I can see them losing in the second round against a team like a Cleveland, like a New York Knicks. And quite frankly, it really clears the deck. You said who's going to stop Boston? Who's going to stop Boston in the Eastern Conference? I think the best shot is, as long as Joel Embiid stays healthy, maybe Philadelphia. But I think the Eastern Conference is pretty much clear for Boston to walk.
Yeah, I'd be surprised, Dane, if it wasn't Boston versus Denver. I mean, really surprised. I got a bet on that on FanDuel. I think it was 4-1. I put that in already. And then I put a couple shekels in on Denver to actually beat Boston at 8-1. Denver, listen, are there a couple of teams? Isn't that kind of ironic? Golden State and the LA Lakers, the 2 veteran teams, are all of a sudden playing their best basketball this season. So when everything is said and done, it may come down to those teams versus Denver. But I think Denver's going to get there, and I just think the Celtics are going to. The Eastern Conference is so bad. Some up-and-coming teams like Indiana and Orlando that might be better next year, the Knicks, but with their injuries. It would really take a collapse by the Celtics not to get there this year. And then they got into the finals before. Yeah. So it's not that. It's actually winning, and I don't think they'll beat Denver, though.
Yeah, I really would have liked to have seen a whole and healthy New York Knicks give a shot at this. I think the loss of Randall is huge. I mean, the way that they were playing with OG Anunoby, I would have liked, the way I know they would have been defensive and had something, I would have liked to have seen that. I don't believe in Milwaukee. I think the Cleveland Cavaliers are a nice team, but I don't think they can beat Boston. I'm telling you, the only way I see it is if now that Joel Embiid is back and they have enough time to kind of harmonize, could Philadelphia do it? I mean, with Joel Embiid, the Sixers have the second best record in the NBA. Remember, they went to 7 games last year. A lot of people kind of forget because they get blown out in Game 7. But Philadelphia was there, and I could see that being a tough matchup. But I do think you're right. It is Boston. You have to respect Denver on the Western side. But I think the West is a little bit more intriguing because you talk about some young up-and-coming teams in the East. How about the young up-and-coming teams in the West? Whether it's Oklahoma City, whether it's New Orleans, whether it's Minnesota, I think there are teams out there that may be too young and stupid to not know what they don't know, kind of thing, and just play balls to the wall and maybe give Denver or a team like the Clippers or whoever else you may like a run for their money. I could see one of these upstarts in the West upsetting the apple cart a little bit more.
Yeah. Who do you think is playing possum more? And you kind of answered it there in your Milwaukee comments, but to me, the one team that's not playing great that potentially, to me in the East is Milwaukee still with Lillard and Giannis. And then in the West, to me, it's the Phoenix Suns. The thought of Durant and Booker and Beal being on that court still, if they poo-poo in this regular season, that to me would be the team in the Western Conference that, okay, maybe out of the blue, some team that really kind of puts it all together. I don't think so, but that would be the team in the Western Conference for me.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you, right? Like, if they were giving their A effort, right? Like, whose best game is good enough, right? And when you have Kevin Durant, you have Booker, you have Beal, I could see if they're all hitting that Phoenix could go on a run. I'm telling you, for me in the West, honestly, I think people completely under-respect Oklahoma City. Everybody's kind of waiting for the shoe to drop on some level, but I think SGA is a legitimate MVP candidate. I like what they're doing. The biggest thing for me in the Western Conference, Scott, I'd love to get your thoughts. They were the subject of your Black Cloud, I think, as well. I want to know still, is Karl Anthony Towns coming back for the Minnesota Timberwolves for the playoffs? Because they're the kind of team, I mentioned their defense. You said you thought, and we wanted to talk about this, that you were going to start to want to play unders as it came to the playoffs. You think as we get to April, May, and June, we get a little bit more half court, we get a little bit more slower pace, we get a little bit more defensive. That plays into Minnesota's hands, in my opinion, as a defensive team. Rudy Gobert, Mike Conley, a veteran kind of point guard, the closer of Anthony Edwards, who has come on as one of the best scorers in the NBA. If Karl Anthony Towns can come back, I think this is a quasi-complete team that was near the 1 seed for most of the season. And I think Minnesota could be interesting. And when you talk about having to get through Denver, they have the size and the bodies to at least run a lot of people and a lot of fouls at the Joker.
Yeah. He's got a torn meniscus. I was just looking at an article there where they're hoping he comes back before the end of the regular season, which, is only a couple of weeks left here, right? So that to me seems a little optimistic, but on paper, they would be the one. They would, because they got some veteran players on that team. They've been through the NBA playoffs before. Not a whole lot of success, but, at least unlike with OKC, they've been there before. So that they might be the one that we're all kind of like throwing away, or a young team, young and dumb and whatever, but actually on paper, would be pretty darn good. So,
yeah, Conley as a veteran point guard is legit.
Right.
He's been to the playoffs before. People like to make fun of Rudy Gobert, but he has a lot of playoff experience. We have a multiple-time defensive player of the year to potentially deal with the Joker, right? Guys like, I think, Naz Reid. If you had Karl Anthony Towns, that's a lot of bodies to put pressure on Jokic, at least.
Yeah. Yeah, and they play with defense too. They play deep. They've been an under team, or at least a low scoring team. Forget about against the spread, but and over under totals, but just a low scoring team. They won with defense this year, so they're accustomed to that. Which I think, again, I do think the numbers and come playoff time are going to come way down. So, Bucks down 10 as a 16, 15 point favorite at home. I tell you, we'll take a break. When we come back, they have got so many bad losses, this Milwaukee Bucks team. I mean, it is just amazing. Just amazing.
And they're still live 2.5-point favorites. They're 2.5-point favorites live, down by 10.
Yeah, down 10, right?
I'll take Toronto plus 2.5 right now. I'll take Toronto plus 2.5 right now, up by 10, late third quarter.
Man, that's embarrassing. Poor Doc Rivers. You got two of the biggest jokers of Doc Rivers and Damian Lillard on that team. Good luck. Miami's up 11 against Houston. Boy, if I had any guts, Dane, that would have been the one. That was like this Houston team was, all the against the spread numbers said Houston because they've been playing great. But you lose a game like they did last night, and then 2 nights ago or 3 nights ago against Minnesota, they're done. The season's over. There was just like no reason for them to get up for this game, and lo and behold, that's why that line went from 1 to 4, and now they're down 11 midway through the third quarter, laying 8.5. Can't do that. Dallas without the how about this late second quarter leading Golden State 52-49 without the Luka in the lineup. I'm telling you, these teams that don't have their star players, they win a lot. They really do. It's uncanny how successful they are. So
in short bursts, right? In short periods. It's not like Luka out for a week would be good.
Game.
But these guys can step up for one night. Absolutely. But these teams are running away. You were on the Miami one. Boston is up by 12 right now. And now, I mean, Toronto's up on the Milwaukee Bucks by 11. And it has just now flipped. The Raptors are now favorites in this game. So that has just flipped as the Raptors go up 14 midway through the third quarter in Milwaukee.
That's wow. between Doc Rivers and Damian Lillard, if they lose again this year, which they will, more than likely, right? I mean, there are no more excuses for Damian Lillard. If you can't win, you always had the excuse in Portland, all right, it was just you. Now you hook up with Giannis, and if you can't win with Giannis, then there's just no more excuses.
So let me ask you. I mean, Milwaukee as the 2 seed is probably going to see the 7, which at this point looks like it's going to be a winner of that play-in between a Miami and a Philly. Philly, who has Joel Embiid back, or Miami, who always punches above their weight come the playoffs. Like, I'll take the toughness of that. I'll take Jimmy Butler over Damian Lillard and Giannis and Doc Rivers any day of the week. Could the Milwaukee Bucks lose in the first round?
They might. I tell you what, they lose tonight, which is certainly a possibility. Now they're only a game up on Cleveland and the Knicks, although the Knicks are losing, for the number 2 spot. They could drop all the way to number 4 or 5 with Orlando with 32 losses, although Orlando's losing tonight as well. It's amazing how they just don't seemingly care about some of this stuff. Giannis better really be hurt if he's out tonight, and he's not. We know that, right? But that Eastern Conference, the way it's all situated, you have 4 teams separated by 3 games. That's with home court advantage on the line and some of that stuff, which you would think would be important, but
maybe they're trying to avoid Boston even more than get home court.
Maybe. But you know what? It doesn't matter sometimes. If you want to lose, you're going to lose. So Cam Stewart coming up next.
So I'm not sure Alabama is the team to knock them off from this second consecutive national championship chase. But what will be the key for the Crimson Tide if they can even cover a number?
That wing ball screen action, how you defend that is going to be a problem because Donovan Clingan, it forces you to change so much what you do defensively if he's able to score inside.
Only on SportsGrid.
Talk all you want about how fat he is. No one can guard him. No one can stop him. He's a violent offender. He does whatever he wants in the low block and at the 10. He just does whatever he wants and scores at will, ad nauseum.
They're the Mike Tyson of college basketball. At some point, they're going to throw a haymaker. And when it connects, Pharrell, you're not getting up.
Pharrell Coast to Coast. Only on SportsGrid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid. Your 24/7 sports wagering network. The early line.
Magical and historic season in Lincoln, Nebraska continues.
He is the best player in the NBA, but also in the biggest moments where the national media is watching.
Newswire.
Something that we have never seen happen before with one of the iconic coaches in the game.
Pharrell Coast to Coast.
The team covers. It's automatic. It's every time. Not sometimes. It's every time.
Game time decisions.
Luka is actually far more dangerous from 3 on the road this year than at home.
This game here tonight, you may want to consider taking as many points as humanly possible.
InGame Live, PrimeTime.
We got not 1, but 2 coaches fired systems in place.
Sports Rage Late
This sort of
Night.
has letdown written all over it. It's going to be hard to match the emotion that they played with the other night.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
welcome back. It is In-Game Live Prime Time here on the grid. Scott Wetzel, Dane Martinez sitting in for Mr. Sherapan and Matt Perrault, both of us filling in tonight, taking you right up until 10 p.m. Eastern time. You know, we talked a little NBA, we talked a little hockey, we talked obviously some baseball stuff, NCAA tournament, UConn and Iowa just getting underway. We have not talked golf. And I bring that up now because some dude, Akshay Bhatia, I'm sure I'm butchering his name, but he's 65-1. And I'm sure you're saying, who the hell bets on that guy, right? Our next guest does and did. And so did I because of his advice. Mr. Cam Stewart, who takes over top of the hour. What's going on, Cam?
Scott, what do we do?
The leader. And
what do we do? Can we call the power guy at the tournament and just say, let's just call it 36 holes? So we don't have to deal with the weekend like they do in English soccer and cricket when the bets are going bad. Let's just shut down the power grid. It's a final. Make sure we get 2 rounds in. We win. It's an official bet. Dane, I'll tell you, so many Sundays I'm sitting there. Wetzel knows it. I've had the leader literally every week heading into the back 9. None of them have closed. I've hedged a couple times, but the tournament last week had 7 guys tied for the lead. You cannot spread out your bet 7 ways. So you have to pick a couple guys and hope for the best. Wetzel, I'm praying we win with Bhatia this week. I liked his vibe, too. He did an interview with Smiley Kaufman. They call it Happy Hour on the 16th, and this kid looked confident. Very, very confident. Strong wins. He got a little bit lucky with the draw, but I'm going to tell you something. His iron game, flush. His putter, good. And he's been playing at a high level. He didn't even go to college. Remember, this kid was like a phenom, and now it takes a while to figure it out on the tour. He's won before, too, but he's been like real close to winning big ones, Scott. Let's put this one home at 65. But I will say this before we move on. Rory McIlroy's lingering at 7-1. If you gave me a better number, I'd think about it. But there's a couple other guys like in the mix of things. Watch out. There's a couple guys that I like, Scott, around like the 25 range. Like we take a look right now. And there's who did I circle? I circled a couple guys that you're like, here it is. Jordan Spieth's 28-1. He's a little bit back, but he's a streaky player. I'm not taking Fleetwood because he chokes on Sundays. But Russell, don't call me Don Henley. He's smooth at 10-1. And a guy I really like. I know this sounds crazy, but Corey Connors, the Canadian, had a nice little run. Do you know he's won this tournament 2 out of the last 4 years? 35-1 live. But Scott, I'm not doing anything. We got a 5-shot lead. If this guy can extend going into Sunday, I want to text you and say, finally, instead of I'm losing my mind and I want to jump through my window when my golf bet collapses.
Cam, you got to text them, but then you also have to hedge. Come on, you got to lock in some profit. You can't go broke making a profit. But Cam, I've got to ask you something because it's been a long time since I've spoken to you. The Rangers just beat the Red Wings 4-3. I have to ask you about one specific member of the New York Rangers. I think you know exactly who I'm going to ask you about. It is Matt Rempe. Okay, this guy has more penalty minutes than ice time. He was the instigator with the elbow. We saw 10 guys drop the gloves within 2 seconds of the matchup against the Devils, and I'm sure that had to be music to your ears. You must have been loving that. Talk to me. What do you think about Rempe, the role he's playing for the Rangers, and ultimately, can my guy Shesterkin and these Rangers, how far can they go?
They can go all the way, Dane. I have futures on these guys, and I'm not for, just violence where you hit the guy over the head with a stick, but I played hockey my whole life. I've been beaten up by a couple guys that played in the National Hockey League when I was younger and played on select teams. So I know it could be a very, very rough sport. But sometimes I learned a long time ago, when your team is down or you need a spark at this time of the year, you need a guy like that on your team. You need a guy that is going to fire it up. And they went in against the Devils. You saw it, Scott? They don't care. It's like, you want to drop the mitts, New Jersey? We're here. And that sends a message because Tampa Bay's got bullies on their team. Florida's the new bully of the East. My Maple Leafs are at Starbucks having frappuccinos. They're not going to fight anybody. If they drop the gloves when I see them next week against the Devils, I'll be shocked. I'll tell my girlfriend what's going on here. They're very talented, but the one thing I like about the Rangers is solid defense, big guys, clutch players, guys who've been there before, and a goaltender that can get hot. And once he does, they are the most dangerous team going. I think they can beat Florida. Actually, I think the Leafs and Rangers actually match up well because Toronto's fast and the Rangers are a little bit tougher. That's one matchup. I think the Rangers would rather play a lot of teams. Carolina's dangerous, but you know what? Right now I'm looking. I think the two most dangerous teams in the conferences are Dallas in the West and the Rangers in the East. That's the way I look at it.
All right. Edmonton just tied up Colorado, Cam. Your thoughts on the game of the night? Dane and I both thought we'd get some goals tonight because I know they played about 2 weeks ago or so, 3 weeks ago, and it was 3-2. And I said, you know what, that's not going to happen again. So we were both liking the over, and we got 4 goals already. They're still in the first period. What were your initial thoughts, and if anything has changed with this game?
I'm on the over in this game as well. I'm waiting for a spot to get in on Iowa against UConn in the ladies' game. This has been fantastic basketball. Watching the South Carolina-NC State game. It's interesting, too, guys, because the ladies who do it here on TSN in Canada, the Nurse sisters, both play at a very, very high level. They were talking about the draft and other things, and happy to see them on the broadcast and succeeding. But Beckers versus Clark, this is fantastic stuff. But back to hockey, I love the over in the game. And if I were to bet it live, Edmonton's at home. We're getting close to the playoffs now. They got to take care of business. I know Colorado's a very, very good team. Not a huge play, Scott, but I will take the Oilers. On my book, it's minus 145 right now. I don't know what you guys are looking at. I got great hockey lines on one of my books, FanDuel Ontario. They're very, very good for hockey. Dane, you wouldn't believe some of the stuff they do. They know me as such a psychopath because I bet on the Sharks. Like, they'll go down 1-0. They'll give me the Sharks plus 2.5, minus 115. Ask Wetzel. The only reason I'm winning these Sharks bets because I'm getting 3.5 when they're down 2 goals. I'm like, yes, they only lost by 3. Thank you. But, it's been that tape. Awesome. I can't wait for the NHL playoffs, guys. Can't wait to get to New York City. Scott, let's get those bets. Let's get them home, too. We got the Masters next week, too. And that's, for everybody, that's kind of like the New Year's Eve or the St. Patrick's Day kind of amateur night. People who don't really gamble a lot do. I bet on every tournament, but they're going to offer a lot of specials and a lot of stuff. And I think we can find some really good angles, especially for some top 10s and 20s. We'll see what happens this week. But Taya, if he wins this tournament too, he's in Augusta. And this course, let me tell you something. Phil Mickelson, lefty. Canadian, Mike Weir, lefty. Who plays well? Brian Harmon, lefty. It's a left-hander's paradise, Dane. I actually covered it for the Score in Canada and like another news channel. They sent me down to Augusta one year.
Yeah.
When Trevor Immelman won, I had Brant Snedeker at 300-1. He finished with Tiger in third. I was crying because I would have won like 20 grand. He's like my favorite guy. He talked to me that week and I bet on him. But let me tell you this, if you're a left-hander, you have a lot of advantages at Augusta. All the dog legs, a lot of them are left. That's why you see, I forgot another one. Bubba Watson, multiple winner at Augusta. So I named 3 guys right there. Proof's in the pudding. Watch out. If Bethea gets in, he's a lefty. Might be a nice flyer. It's hard to go back-to-back, though, if he wins this week.
Let me ask you a golf question here, Cam. You know, it's been so long, and I love talking to you about this stuff.
Dane, this is fantastic. I thought I was on the wrong network. I'm like, what is this, 2017?
It's all good.
Can I get some winners in the almanac?
One of my good friends, and your old good friend, too, I do shows now with Chris Meany. And let me tell you something. He's giving me hockey plays left and right. We are banging parlays in the NHL. Nobody is sharper than our guy Meany when it comes to the NHL. But I digress. Let me ask you about the Masters next week, okay? I would love to understand kind of your blueprint on a couple of things. One, do you care about like recent form or like you're saying horses for courses? You're trying to talk about the lefties because guys like Wyndham Clark, guys like Jason Day, I think have had good starts to their season as well and are big time numbers. That's what I want to ask you first. The second thing is, Cam, how many guys are you taking before the tournament starts? And then how many might you add to your card? What are you looking for on a moving day? Guys that just got unlucky, had one blow-up hole, who lipped out a couple of putts. Like, what's your approach to identify guys on Friday and Sunday live and add to your card?
Great questions. And they're very, we could do this all night, but I'm going to tell you simply, for a regular tournament, Scott knows I usually take 6 guys or have 5 because I drank a beer. Yeah, 6-pack, and I usually have 1 sometimes if I'm not, so 5 in a bomb. But here for the Masters, I have a different approach. I try to look at guys. I can't take Scheffler at 4-1 yet because remember, the live guys are coming back. Koepka's back. All these good players, Cam Smith is coming back. Watch out. So this is the tournament, and they still are golfers. They're very good, and a lot of them have good track records. So I'm going to basically start my portfolio around 20-1. With a couple guys. I've already bet Patrick Cantlay at 30-1. And I think he's a very dangerous player. I don't really like the guy, Dane. I don't like his waddle. I don't like his Goldman Sachs look. You know, he's kind of a drip. But you know what?
You don't like him not wearing caps for the Ryder Cup team? You don't like him not wearing the hat?
Yeah. I got a lot of issues with Cantlay for like whatever. Like, dude, play for your country and just shut up. He's a good golfer, though. He's a very good golfer, and I respect his game. He takes too long. But you're getting a guy like him at 30-1. I'm also thinking, this guy has broken people's hearts while it's around, and Brady Cannon on our show, Xander Schauffele. But then I thought about him. Like, Schauffele now only wins the Olympics. But at 22-1, Dane, this is the thing about the Masters. What can you do? You could post a number and watch other guys. He will win the tournament not when he's looking at himself at the top of the leaderboard. If he's in 3 or 4 groups behind, puts up a number, which he does a lot, and watches other guys. Right. He has been that guy. He should have won the Masters twice. He put one on the drink in the par 3. He was right there. Dangerous number at 22-1. Hideki Matsuyama is a guy that always plays well at Augusta. You talked about horses for courses, and I'm looking at a lefty. I already took Brian Harman at 70-1.
2 NBA games start top of the hour. Well, actually, one starts at 10:40. But Minnesota at Phoenix, Utah at the LA Clippers. Any thoughts on those games, Cam?
I got to be honest with you, Scott. I'm more into this ladies' college basketball right now.
Okay.
It's like, you know, and I'm not. Hey, not going to say I'm not going to bet on them, but I'm looking for an angle.
UConn, then? We got UConn's up 5 right now. You probably get
Iowa
with some points.
If I'm done this segment and UConn goes up like 7-9, I'm hitting Iowa live. This was my game plan from the get-go. Do you guys have an opinion on the total? Jazz Clippers, is that 223.5? Is that light? Dane, what do you think? I'm not really seeing the NBA board. I got to be honest with you. I'm focused on golf, women's basketball,
with Boston running away in the second half. We're fading these Milwaukee Bucks. They got some really bad losses. They're not showing up. And now the Toronto Raptors are beating them by 6 in Milwaukee. So we were on that. I was also on the Caitlin Clark under 34.5 points. That's a ridiculous number. She's only got 2 so far. And I know I only got a minute left. Cam, I got to ask you. I'm a Jets fan. I know you're a Bills guy. How are the Bills still favorites in the AFC East after letting Stephon Diggs go? No Gabe Davis. What are they going to do? I know they run the ball more now that Joe Brady is there, but are they still the best team in the AFC East?
No, I'm really worried. If Aaron Rodgers stays healthy, I think the Jets are going to be phenomenal, but that's the big if. Miami will be better. Remember, they played without Waddle and half their defense. They were taking guys off the couch to play. The Bills have a lot of problems right now. They need a really good draft. They got to find a receiver in the draft, and they have to find a DB. They were often injured guys, but I'll tell you, they shouldn't be plus 150 to win the damn division. But I bet on Houston, the Texans, great number. I know I'm buying into this stuff right now. I think that's a great price in that division. I got to tell you one other thing. They might not win. On my book, the Pittsburgh Steelers are 11-1 to win that division. I'm not going to say they're going to do it, but that price is insane. They should be about
7.5, Cam. Pittsburgh's win total is 7.5. They had 8 last year. 9 last year. How are they going?
Is Mike Tomlin still the coach?
Mike Tomlin's the coach. Yeah. You got Justin Fields, an athlete. You got 2 quarterbacks who can do different things. Russell Wilson can still play, and you got a great defense. Are we missing something here? Hey, Wetzel, over. Let's party. Dane, pleasure.
Absolutely.
Hot Tub Time Machine. Haven't seen this guy in a long time.
Cam, top of the hour.
So I'm not sure Alabama is the team to knock them off from this second consecutive national championship chase. But what will be the key for the Crimson Tide if they can even cover a number?
That wing ball screen action, how you defend that is going to be a problem because Donovan Clingan, it forces you to change so much what you do defensively if he's able to score inside.
Only on SportsGrid.
Talk all you want about how fat he is. No one can guard him. No one can stop him. He's a violent offender. He does whatever he wants in the low block and at the 10. He just does whatever he wants and scores at will, ad nauseum.
They're the Mike Tyson of college basketball. At some point, they're going to throw a haymaker. And when it connects, Pharrell, you're not getting up.
Pharrell Coast to Coast. Only on SportsGrid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid, your 24/7 sports wagering network. The early line.
Magical and historic season in Lincoln, Nebraska continues.
He is the best player in the NBA, but also in the biggest moments where the national media is watching.
Newswire.
Something that we have never seen happen before with one of the iconic coaches in the game.
Pharrell, coast to coast.
The team covers. It's automatic. It's every time. Not sometimes. It's every time.
Game time decisions.
Luka is actually far more dangerous from three on the road this year than at home.
This game here tonight, you may want to consider taking as many points as humanly possible.
In-game live, prime time.
We got not one, but two coaches fired systems in place.
Sports Rage
This
late
sort of
night.
has letdown written all over it. It's going to be hard to match the emotion that they played with the other night.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Hi, welcome back. In-game live, prime time, wrapping up shop. Quick little 2 hours here. Cam and Gabe will take over top of the hours. They take you over the next 3 right here on the grid. I just wish Cam had a little bit more energy. Otherwise, he'd be great for TV. Yeah. Well, you talk about him, just a bowl full of energy. Just how you doing, Cam?
You gotta love Cam.
Yeah, he's great.
You gotta love Cam. We talk hockey. We talk golf. We talk football. It's great.
He knows it all. Right.
No, he absolutely does, and that's what you got to love about him. I'll give you 2 updates on things we've been watching, okay? We are now mid-4th quarter. The Toronto Raptors are up on the Bucks by 6, 95-89, and we are just at the start of the second quarter in the women's game, and here's what I'll tell you. It's 21-14 UConn. Caitlin Clark, 2 points so far. A far cry from 34.5, Scott.
14 points they have in the second quarter. They scored 14 in the first, but they've yet to score in the second quarter here. That's bad. The over-under is down to 149.5. I did like the over, but I got a feeling, you know what, I may bail on that right now before it gets even lower. Whatever they're doing it well to shut down Iowa. Long ways to go, but yeah, you give me UConn in points and plus odds, that's the way to go. Bucks are pathetic, down 8 now. Yeah. Baseball stuff. Braves still trailing 5-2, but they do have a runner on second base, bottom of the 8th inning. Get an 11-1 on them. Texas 10-0 now over the Astros. How's your same game parlay working out with the Brewers? They're up 4-3 now against Seattle.
We're doing all right. They're up 4-3 though, so I don't really have much margin for error because I needed that game to be under 7.5 or 8.5. So I need it right there. We need to keep it right there. Peralta got me the strikeouts. But if we stop the game right now, I need rain in Milwaukee. That's what I need, Scott.
That's it. Exactly. Edmonton, Colorado tied at 2. So, all right, when we talk again on Monday, maybe if we do, who's going to be in the finals for the NCAA championship?
Oh, it'll be UConn and Purdue. I think both favorites win.
Yeah. It's chalky. It's the public, but I think so as well. You can put them in a parlay and get a halfway decent price if you want to. Dane, great job, man. It was a lot of fun working with you. Hopefully we get a chance to do it again.
Sounds great.